Dr. Heidi Grant here with another episode of 3 Things to Do. You know the routine. If you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Today's topic is a really important one. And again, as many of you know, we've been recording a lot of these episodes of 3 Things to Do during the COVID-19 pandemic. It's almost impossible to turn on a television these days without becoming terrified of what you're being told. And again, even before COVID-19, there were certainly plenty of things that we all had to be afraid of. I've talked on this show in the past about techniques you can use to manage your emotions more effectively, but today I want to really dive deep into one particular emotion that I think many of us are experiencing more than ever before these days. So here's 3 things to do to deal with fear. Fear is really a tricky one. The experience of fear and anxiety does an incredibly maladaptive things to our brains, and I've talked about that on this show before. That generally when we experience really strong anxiety or strong fear, our brain wants to kind of go in a couple of directions. The first is the flight direction. We want to either sort of freeze and stand still, like that proverbial deer in the headlights, or we want to run for the hills and get away from whatever is making us afraid. The alternative is the fight response, where sometimes we channel that fear we're feeling into a more aggressive posture to try to do battle with the things that are making us afraid. And the reality is that while those are some really productive ways of coping with fear for our great ape ancestors in the wild, in the modern human existence, fight and flight are pretty terrible options when it comes to dealing with the things that we're afraid of. We need to actually be able to manage that fear and work through it in a positive and productive way. So today I'm going to give you 3 strategies you can use to deal more effectively with the experience of fear. The first strategy is to get specific. And what I mean by that is that very often when we're feeling afraid, we're just sort of feeling generally afraid of a thing, right? We're afraid to go to the doctor's office. We're afraid to talk to our partner about a difficult topic. And so we have this sort of general vague fear that something bad might happen. And that turns out to actually be really difficult to defeat psychologically. If you just have this sort of vague fear that something bad might happen, it's hard to work your way through it in a rational way mentally. So one thing you can do is to try to get more specific. If you have to go to the doctor's office, what exactly are you afraid of? What do you think that doctor is likely to tell you that could be scary to you? Or if you're going to have a conversation with your partner about something you're sort of dreading bringing up, what do you think might actually happen? What do you think their response is likely to be? The more we get specific, we really get concrete in picturing exactly how something might go wrong. It becomes then something that we can more rationally deal with. We can prepare ourselves for. And we can do something else that's really important, which is the second strategy for dealing with fear. Consider the odds. Very often when we think about our fears, we just think about them without any consideration of how likely those bad things are to actually occur. Many people who are afraid of flying, for example, it's natural in some sense to be afraid of flying, right? Hurling through the air in this machine, thousands and thousands of feet above the ground. But on the other hand, the odds of something bad happening to you are phenomenally low, right? The odds of actually being in some sort of accident, right? So when we think about the odds of something happening to us, it helps to calm us down immediately. Yes, you have to go to the doctor, but what are the chances they're really going to tell you something terrible? After all, you feel fine, right? Or yes, you're going to have an uncomfortable conversation with your partner, but what are the odds it's actually going to blow up your entire relationship? When we consider the odds, suddenly our fears diminish, right? We recognize that actually there's a pretty decent chance everything is going to be fine, and that kind of thinking can help us to get our fear into a better place. And finally, the third strategy you can use to deal more effectively with fear is to actually do something we tend to not want to do, but it really works, and it's face the worst case scenario. There was a really famous psychologist named Albert Ellis who was really well known for this form of therapy he created, where he would have patients come to him who were really upset about terrible things going on in their lives, and he'd say, all right, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen here? And he'd encourage them to face it. There's also a long history of Stoic philosophy that ascribes to the same principle, which is that often when we face the worst case scenario in a situation, we realize it's not actually that bad. It's not going to kill us. It's not something we can't cope with or find a way through. So really tackling the worst possible way this could turn out head on can be something that ironically ends up really diminishing the amount of fear you feel. So let's go through those 3 strategies one more time for dealing with fear. The first is get specific. What exactly do you think might go wrong? The more concrete you make the details, the more manageable they start to feel. Second, consider the odds. Yes, bad things happen. Bad things happen all the time, but what are the odds it's going to happen to you? Thinking about that can help you get the right amount of fear and not be overwhelmed by it. And finally, face the worst case scenario. Sometimes we, again, spend so much time sort of vaguely fearing a thing that we don't think about, all right, what's the actually worst thing that could happen here? And when we do that, very often we find that that worst case scenario isn't so bad. It's something that we will be able to manage and find a way through. Thanks again for tuning in to season 2 of 3 Things to Do. We're going to take a bit of a break, but we'll be back again with season 3 and more tips that you can use to be better at just about anything in your everyday life. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you know about it when that season 3 finally launches, and share this video. Please share this video with anyone you know who's experiencing the kind of extraordinary fear that so many of us are experiencing these days, because these strategies will really, really help them get through these tough times. Thanks again for tuning in. See you again soon.